Hey guys, Danny with Danny Gustin Fitness Podcast here with Josh Romero, one of our top dogs here. Josh had the idea today that he wanted to talk about how the fitness industry has shifted a little bit in the last decade or so relative to the fact that once upon a time you either did cardio equipment or you were a meathead, right? And now those concepts have changed a lot, where there's a lot more balance in the fitness industry and how people approach strength training. People are training to age more gracefully. They're training to improve their quality of life, play with their kids better, whatever that may be. It's to enhance quality of life and not just be about getting stronger, being sexy, cardiovascular health. So we're going to talk about some of the things we've seen with those shifts, some of the experiences we've had with our own clients, and a few other little nuggets in there. So thank you guys so much for being with us. And Josh, thanks for the idea.
Yeah, no problem. Let's get it.
So I left it up to you today to determine kind of how we wanted to lead the title or lead the conversation of the podcast.
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk about how people training and exercising for longevity, meaning to help them age more gracefully and live longer, has influenced the fitness industry.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, hitting it on the nail with that headline. We're seeing just a huge boom, at least I am, of people prioritizing a little bit more weight training into the mix versus I think what we were traditionally brought up with of just maybe running or walking on the treadmill. And I think it's an amazing thing, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I want to get your take on that pretty much and see where you've seen your clients kind of benefit from that and just kind of play back and forth and pretty much your thought process too.
Yeah, I think to your point, in the past, there's been more of an extreme, right? So you have people who either, I don't want to work out or lift weights, strength train, because I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Or that's for meatheads. We even still get a little bit of that more from older clients, I would say, who come in and go, well, I'm not trying to bodybuild or join Mr. Olympia or something. It's like, well, that's so not what exercise is about at this point.
Yeah.
Right. But that being said, I would say that mindset was more so in the past where, you're either trying to be sexy, get super strong, or, you're just someone who wants to improve their heart health.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? Or maybe some niche stuff like yoga and Pilates and things like that. But for the most part, as far as I think the gym went, strength training went, it's you're either the cardio crowd working on heart health and burning some calories, or you're trying to get jacked, trying to get strong. And I think now more than ever, those concepts are blended, where people are not thinking about strength training in terms of getting jacked. I mean, there's still that element of it, right?
Yeah.
But it's how can I use squats, lunges, whatever exercises for my lower body to better support my knees and make sure that I'm not going to slip on ice, make sure that I'm going to be able to keep up with the kids, right?
Definitely.
So those are the couple of things that I've thought about regarding that, but also I've seen with my own clients. So what are some of the things you've seen as far as, some of your clients today, and maybe what are some of their motivations for coming in?
Yeah, I come across the same thing where maybe whether it's a male or female, they say, hey, I'm not really trying to hit the weights because I'm not trying to get beefy and jacked. And
yeah.
I mean, my rebuttal is always the same, is if that was the case, I'd be 3 times my size, you know? So it takes a long time, and
especially how strong you are.
Yeah.
Right? If people knew your numbers,
they
probably would assume you'd be built like 150, 70, whatever, right? You'd just be walking around.
Exactly.
Tell them a couple of your numbers real quick, just to give people an idea of that.
Yeah, so a rough background on my numbers. Let's talk about the big 3, the squat, the bench, the deadlift. So my bench is on the lower side just because of my shoulder injury I picked up a couple years ago, and that's still 175 pounds was like my 1 rep max. It's probably a little bit lower because I haven't really been prioritizing the bench press as much. Deadlift is 325 right now is my max. And then this past October, I did a 1-month training setup where it was every single day hitting the squat rack like consistently lifting heavy. And sounds counterintuitive, but I've done this program for the past 3 years. And this year it got me from a 275 squat to a 315. That's a first for me. And I'm only 125 pounds. So
yeah, that's the crazy part, the pound for pound part of it.
Exactly, right? So just like you were talking about your numbers, you'd probably have to hit what, like a 550, 600 pound squat?
I'd be getting up into the fives for sure.
Yeah, so proportional to my body weight, it's up there. So
yeah,
I'm pretty confident.
And another one, your chin-ups.
Oh, yeah.
You're hitting super deep range of motion, clean chin-ups with at least a 45, right?
Yeah. And that's just, honestly, I mean, there's a lot more nuance. We've been training for a while, so we're best at what we do.
Yeah.
Like martial arts, you got me beat hands down. You know, you can probably teach me a thing or two. But when it comes to stuff like that, I'm just so in tune with the weights in my body that I know where that limit is, which is harder to gauge for some other people.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, though, going back to our clients, right? There's a lot of misinformed like people where they just think the weights is just going to get them jacked or they're going to end up hurting themselves. But we both know we play our cards right. My goal isn't to get you on a stage anytime soon unless you want to.
Yeah.
But if you can take all your groceries upstairs without your back giving you any issues, or you can squat down and pick up some clothes or laundry off the ground without your knees cracking, like that's what we're looking for. And that's what we're seeing more of, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
And why do you think that there has been that transition where now more, because I get the same thing. Obviously, you know, I screen a lot of people who want to join our program. And when I'm talking to them, I get a good idea for their goals. And one of the things a lot of people are going to say nowadays, especially, is I want to work out without having to worry about hurting myself, or I want to age gracefully, right? You know, I'm getting into my 50s, my 60s, or even, hey, my kids are starting to get a little older. I want to make sure I can keep up with them, that kind of thing, right? And so now, because there's such an emphasis on that now, why do you think that's shifted a little bit over the last, 10 years or so, where people are more interested or more aware of how they can use fitness for longevity's sake and just improving their general quality of life versus, again, these big grandiose goals?
Yeah, I think it was pretty much, there's a handful of things that play a factor for that, but one of the main things is more access to information, right?
Internet.
Exactly, and there's a lot more studies out now that say and promote strength training, whatever that looks like. And we're not talking about 1 rep maxes, just generally speaking, hitting the weights a little bit more, right?
Yeah, just to clarify for anyone listening who even maybe still has some of that misconception of what strength training is. Essentially, strength training is just using any sort of tool or modality to, whether that be a resistance band, your own body weight, dumbbells, barbells, etc., machines, etc., used in such a way that you are pushing your body past its baseline threshold to where you're going to adapt and change from that, right? It's similar to going out in the sun. The sun has to be strong enough for your skin to change tone, right? It's not going to happen in the winter. You're not going to go outside and get tan in the winter. So same thing, if I am capable of lifting 10 pounds, but if I go and lift 5 pounds, that not much is going to happen, right? So you got to have a strong enough stimulus to change, and that's what it's all about. You can do that with bands, you can do that with body weight, you can do that with dumbbells, barbells, etc. But that's the bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Is that you're finding a way to use those tools to take things just a little bit further, week to week, month to month, and so on and so forth.
And to kind of dip back in, like there's nothing wrong with cardio training, like pure just running,
no doubt.
Endurance, calisthenics. You can strength train in that capacity, but there's what I find a limit to how far the body's going to go until it's a little more endurance of like, okay, I've mastered my chin up. Now it's more or less how many reps can I do of that, or how long can I stay on the bar versus hitting the weights. There's so much variability. And I think that's the second thing with the information part is accessibility. They got to access to us, all the equipment. You can build your strength, pure strength with weights. You can build your endurance with the weights. You can build muscle with the weights.
Yeah.
You can do all three at the same time, but something's going to take precedent, right?
Yeah.
And it's on us as the professionals to know where those ranges lie And when we see them start to dip into something else, to kind of reel them in and maybe add a couple extra pounds to the lift, make it more challenging.
Yeah.
Or add a couple more reps to kind of move the needle to the right or the left, whatever that is.
And to your point, having those multiple variables, tailoring it to their goals.
Exactly.
Right? So if you do have someone who, let's say, maybe they want to build muscle, but they're also talking about how, like some of your clients who play soccer, for example.
Yeah.
You know, on the weekends, they're in their 40s, they play soccer. You know, for him, it may not make sense to just be going all in on low rep strength training, right? So blending it in such a way that does incorporate some cardiovascular training, does incorporate some more muscular endurance, but he also does want to build muscle, get stronger, and he will need that ability to explode while he's so that lower rep strength training can be beneficial too.
Exactly.
But it's up to, like you said, it's up to either the person to figure that out for themselves or relying on a professional to find a way to blend all the goals that are important to you in a way that works for you.
Yeah. And this is my favorite thing going to the athletes especially, is they're a more kind of fine-tuned population, but I've yet to find a single athlete in any category, whether it's a baseball player, a soccer player, a football player, that does not incorporate the weights in one capacity or the other, right? And that's amazing to me, right?
Yeah.
You can throw your ball as hard as you can. You can run routes. You can do X, Y, and Z, right? But at the end of the day, you still need to incorporate those weights in some capacity to get you stronger to go over some of those hurdles, which is amazing to me, right?
Absolutely. So, and when I see I'm sure every once in a while you've had clients bring up a new fad of some sort, right? And I kind of take what you just said and apply that to helping people. I'm not saying, I mean, sometimes a fad becomes a thing, it becomes a new staple, right? But I always ask, they're like, hey, did you hear about that thing where you hook yourself up to a machine and then you do this and that? And I'm like, are professional athletes doing it?
Yeah.
Because if they're not, it's BS.
Yeah. I've had at least 3 general clients that talk about like the like Oculus or like the restricted blood flow training.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've tried that in the past. I get the burn.
Occlusion
Yeah,
training.
occlusion, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried that. It feels
Oculus
good for the
is
pump.
like
Yeah,
VR.
that's the VR stuff, right? I'm too much of a gamer. That's why it kind of triggered
You're just
into
thinking
me.
of gaming.
Right. But jumping back in, I'm like, I could see the benefit. Now, I don't know too much research behind that, but based off of your goals and what you tell me, like, I don't see the correlation to why that would fit to the program. Now, you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Like I said, for us and what we're trying to accomplish here, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's all about being effective.
Exactly.
Right?
So.
Getting the most juice, the biggest squeeze you can get out of your exercise, your workout, your time, right?
Definitely.
'Cause we're all busy. But bringing it back to the longevity thing, what are some of the results or the stories even, right, more broadly speaking, that you've seen with your clients, someone who that is their goal? Hey, I want to improve with these metrics that I think are going to help me have a more quality of life, a full life, age gracefully, et cetera. What are some of the stories you've seen, and maybe what are some of the things that you've seen help them, and maybe even some of their hurdles going through that?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had a handful of people where, like, for example, my cousin, just kicking it off. I've been training him for about 3 or 4 months now. And when we started, he was 280, right? Only so much weight training and machine training we could do until he was just tapped out. He didn't know the first thing about fitness. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone starts at a certain point.
Yeah.
But his main couple points why he came to me is we're about the same age, right? His back's been giving out on him. Clothes weren't fitting, but it's more personal stuff, which really hit home for me, is like going to amusement parks and not even being able to get on the ride, or making an attempt to get on the ride and being kicked back because you're too big to even stay on. Like when you're with your whole family, that hits.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hitting the weights now and then gradually progressing him, we're down 40 pounds right now. He's probably down a little bit more since we last weighed in, right? Now we're trying to bring him down to 200 pounds. Clothes are starting to fit that he hadn't worn since high school.
What's his name?
So his name is Damien.
Shout out to Damien.
Yeah, so shout out to you, Damien. You're killing it. Everyone knows you're killing it, right?
So that's awesome.
And like just quality of life. That's the main thing. Whether it's him or...
So he's a young guy, but and again, drawing it back to quality of life, it wasn't necessarily about, I want to lose weight to be sexy or anything like that. I'm sure that's part of it,
Yeah.
right? Feeling good about yourself. But the main catalyst that brought him in here was improving his quality of life.
Exactly, yeah. And maybe he might not have known that in the past, like that's why he's going in.
Yeah.
But it all ties back to that. And I think with all our clients, it's a matter of quality of life. If you're trying to get better and look better for your husband or your spouse, right? You're just trying to build something to have a better quality of life because you don't like yourself and you feel like your spouse doesn't either. Or if you're, like I got another lady, Heather, right now, she's got scoliosis in her back, right? And for her, it was a matter of her dog going through a lot of complications. Above 60 pounds, right?
She's like the dog mom of the century.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so she's got to take this guy.
Any dog would be lucky to be adopted by Heather.
Exactly. Yeah. And so she's like amazing person. She has to take this dog in and out of the house and in her car. And that's a lot of weight for anybody.
And it's dead weight.
Exactly. And now you're dealing with the scoliosis, the curve of the spine, right? And you haven't strength trained in so long. So everything's just doubling down to where now we're at a point where she's moving better. Dog is still going to weigh the same, but she's able to pick him up a lot smoother. And on top of that, I mean, we're trying to get stronger, but she's telling me clothes is fitting better.
Yeah.
Right? Quality of life. That's all that is. You know,
that's awesome.
Things like that just hypes me up and just excites me.
Yeah.
When I first came in, I thought I was going to be training like people my age, right?
Yeah.
Wanting to hit the weights, high schoolers. But now that I'm getting a little bit of like my cousin who's trying to tone down. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, we got someone like Heather, who's got scoliosis, brand new wheelhouse for me.
Or even a couple of your new clients where it's almost entirely about the fact that they want to improve.
Yeah.
They're in later like 50s, 60s, and
Yeah.
it's all about, hey, I've exhausted some of my options with traditional medicine.
Yeah.
And I need to feel better.
And they have that
Here I am.
mindset coming in that it's counterintuitive to hit the weights when their back is hurting them.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, well, to a certain extent, maybe some exercises are limited right now.
Yeah.
But I can see a reality or a future where potentially you can do all that stuff. Now, if it doesn't happen, cool, but what do? We modify the exercise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then we reassess and we kind of hit the drawing board again. It's kind of like playing darts. Right? Maybe you hit too high with an exercise and something happens and we got to reassess and it wasn't the right fit. Maybe we lower the weight down and it's a completely different exercise. Or we just change the handle or the grip, right? Now that's things that me and you are more in tune with, and that they don't have to know about all that stuff yet, right?
Yeah.
But there is a route where we can hit these type of weights with certain variables and we could get you back on track. I'm pretty confident about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I was having relative to the modification thing because I think that's so key to this conversation, talking about longevity, aging gracefully, improving your quality of life, all those things. That's one of the biggest things I think we offer as trainers is when if you're working with a physical therapist, whoever knows what they're doing relative to that, if you are feeling some discomfort while you do some things, which happens often when you get older, right? Especially, stenosis, arthritis, whatever, general breakdown of the body, right? Which can happen just because, right? But I think a lot of the times people's intuition and response, whatever you want to call it, can be, okay, I'm pulling back. Mm-hmm. I'm pulling back. And there's something to that, right? Because if tissue is sensitized, you don't want to further sensitize it, right?
Yeah.
Like the analogy I like to use with people sometimes is you can't necessarily take a symptom and attribute it to the cause. Mm-hmm. So for example, if I do this with my thumb, this doesn't hurt, right?
Yeah.
But if you took a hammer and hit my thumb with it, then this hurts. Mm-hmm. Does that mean this is bad? Or does that mean my thumb's already super, super sensitized, right? So this isn't the problem. It's like bringing it back to this, right? And so I think that's a big part of what we offer is, hey, we're not going to further sensitize it. So if this bothers you right now, so be it.
Yeah.
But let's modify exercises to build you up, get you stronger, because if we get closer to this, the root cause, which might be that your hips are tight or your core's weak or whatever, right? Your rotator cuff doesn't really fire well, right?
Yeah.
If the closer we can get to that, the better. And the other thing that, again, I think a lot of people don't appreciate as they get older is use it or lose it. Mm-hmm. And so you could go, if you start leaning too much into that, I'm just going to really not do much. I'm going to walk. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, which again has its role.
Yeah.
But the reality is the body's meant to go through all of its ranges of motions. The muscles are meant to be stressed. The bones are meant to be stressed.
Yeah.
And when you remove that because of pain, you end up in this cycle of you're not getting lubrication through the joints. The lymph nodes aren't circulating properly.
Yeah.
And you feel worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And then the worst thing that can happen is your muscles start to atrophy.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, it's kind of game over.
Yeah.
And
that's the tricky fine line that we got to find too. And especially for anyone that's watching this, that's feeling like, hey, I have this ache or pain that no matter what I've done, it feels like I can't get rid of that, right? Now the goal is, like, I break it down to this for my clients is, it took you X amount of years to get this body type. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
Right? But like I said, there is a reality where we can modify, get you back on track. And anyone listening to this too, like, I get fired up when we find an exercise that doesn't fit. Why is that? Because, like, that's a benchmark for us to keep in.
That's a good point.
Say someone is not able to do planks or flutter kicks because their lower back flares up.
Yeah.
All right, let's get rid of that.
Yeah.
But let's strength train. Let's throw some other movements into the mix. Don't worry about that right now.
Yeah.
And we're going to circle back around in a couple months, right? Reassess. You're going to do that same exercise, but you're not even going to remember that it was painful. But I am.
Yeah.
And that was intentional, right?
Yeah.
And then when I break it down to them, it's like, oh, you're right. I've never, like, this is the first time, right?
Oh, yeah.
And just seeing that light just fire up in their eyes of, like, I actually am making a difference.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the weeds of things, like lifting the weights and all that,
yeah,
we adjust it all the time based on their reactions. So to them, it always feels hard.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
But if you take them back to that first day, that square one, there's no stimulus in that workout at all.
That's
That's
awesome.
exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Know?
And in many ways, that's more exciting for me now than, again, when I got into training thinking I'm going to help change people's physiques and all this stuff. And, I'm like, now that's cool, right?
Yeah.
But this is almost like, I don't know, I just get a certain feeling, like you said, when they couldn't do it and now they could.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what's more empowering than just being able to do what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we all felt so amazing as kids. Is you didn't think.
Yeah.
You just did.
Yeah.
Right? And that's freeing. And hopefully we can help as many people not necessarily do everything they want to do, but, help them get closer to the person they want to be and being able to do the things they want to do. So,
Definitely.
Josh, this was Josh's idea. Cool little 20-minute video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed jamming all that content in. It feels like it flew right by. Nico's over here telling us it's time out. So anyways, thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys.